Everyone. So, the next stage of development, we'll talk about early childhood. And this is the stage of development that looks at children between the ages of 2 and 6 years of age. And as with the first 2 years of life, we will look at the development from the biosocial perspective to the cognitive perspective, and finally with the psychosocial. So, starting with the biosocial perspective, let's look at the body changes during this time. During this period of development, you will notice that the 2-year-olds that had those chubby cheeks and arms and legs and protruding tummy and big head in comparison to the body is going now to turn into this taller, slimmer, um, more of a muscular 4-year-old or 5-year-old, and more proportionate or more adult looking, as in if you were to look at the distance between the legs in comparison to the rest of the body, you're going to see a little bit of more proportionate body distribution than it was with the first 2 years. Another change has to do with the center of gravity, and the center of gravity is basically where the point where both sides of your body are equally weighing the same. And this used to be around the breastbone during the first 2 years because of the heavy weight of the head in comparison to the rest of the body. Now that's going to move down to the belly button within the early childhood years because of that proportionate body distribution that we talked about. Another important factor is the body mass index, which is a ratio of body weight to body height. That is going to be the lowest during these 5 and 6-year-old years in comparison to what it will be during the rest of the lifespan. So, in general, what you're looking at for a typically developing preschooler is a weight gain of about 4.5 pounds per year and about 3 inches in height. So, a typically developing preschooler is going to end up around at the end of this stage. A 6-year-old would be about 3.5 feet tall and might weigh about 40 to 50 pounds. Now, with body changes comes nutrition, and when we talk about nutrition during these early years, one of the top complaints of moms or parents in general during these years is the very small appetite, or that the child doesn't eat enough or all their food. Well, here's the thing. Yes, appetite decreases during those years, and there's a reason for that, and that is the need for the amount of calories that were needed is now going to be less during those years than it was in the first 2 years. In the first 2 years, if you notice, there's a lot of changes in the body, there's a lot of weight gain, there's a lot of height. There is a difference in that 2 months old comparison to 2 years old. But when you look at the difference in size between let's say, a 3-year-old to a 4-year-old to a 5-year-old, the difference is minor, and therefore the number of calories that are needed is less. Now, the problem is that with that small appetite, parents have to be very choosy on how to well nourish that child so that they don't crowd out that small appetite and fill it with junk food or unessential nutrients, therefore giving way to problems such as obesity early on. One of my favorite things to do when I'm at the preschool is actually to look at the children's lunch boxes, and it never fails. Those parents who usually complain about their children's appetite or lack of, they are usually the ones that crowd their child's lunchbox with food that is highly processed or full of sugar or salt or additives. They're rarely including healthy options in their child's lunchbox. Of course, the child is getting full too fast, and usually will start with the least healthy option before they can move on to whatever it is that they are sending, such as a piece of fruit or a cheese stick or so forth. Obesity by default is going to be a major problem, and this is something that's starting to become more and more of a problem in developed nations, in particularly the United States. We have childhood obesity starting to become a major problem in our country, and it starts very early on with those options that you are giving children and how you are satisfying that small appetite. Now, sugar is a major culprit in this. Everything that children eat or drink has huge amounts of sugar. And in addition to the problems that sugar creates as far as cavities and hyperactivity, well, sugar also affects the processing of food and contributes to obesity. One very interesting study was conducted to see if there is a connection between socioeconomic status and poor nutrition or obesity. And what scientists found is that, yes, indeed, there is a connection between the level of education of the parent and the level of income and the chances that the child is prone to obesity. The better choices that the parent makes, the better educated the parent is about what is healthy and what is not healthy, the better the health of that child was. Now, there was another interesting study that found that many parents don't really realize that their child is indeed overweight. And the problem is when those parents were told that their children are overweight, sometimes that recognition negatively impacted the children because the parent became more alert and more negative and pointed out the fact that the child should or shouldn't be eating this, which created a lot of, stress, and therefore children may develop destructive eating habits early on because of the self-consciousness about their weight. Food allergies are also a contributing factor to poor nourishment, and that's because the majority of items that people are usually allergic to are mostly nutritious. Milk, eggs, peanuts, or any type of nuts, really, fish. These are all examples of healthy options. And having a child who is not able to eat them also contributes to the limited amount of healthy options that the parent might have.